Numbers is mere statistics. There are stories behind them, and I love you too, Shreyana. And that's the effort that we're hoping to put together here, because at the end of the day, you also need a repository of credible data that can be used to direct intervention where intervention is required. This is the first, ladies and gentlemen, the first CNBC-TV18 FICCI Gender Parity Survey. So thank you very much to the team at FICCI for joining hands with us. You'll see the graphics coming up on your screens, and you know, the story is an incomplete one at this point in time. There's a lot of distance that needs to be covered, and let me just give you some of the highlights of the survey. As I pointed out, it covered over 80 companies across the manufacturing and the services sector, companies with a turnover of 20 crores plus. And here's what we know from the survey. 69% of the gender composition in the workforce is male, 31% is female. So we do have a long distance to cover. Here's what we need to focus on, and that is attrition. Attrition in the workforce. Between the age group of 20 and 30, we see 15% of women dropping out. Between the age group of 30 to 40, 13% of the female workforce drops out, and that is something that we need to focus on. That is something that we need to intervene in. So, Naina, let me start by asking you, and we're going to keep showing up some of these graphics on the screen. But in terms of intervention, especially on the back of the efforts that you championed yourself with the organizations that you worked with and currently with the boards that you're on, what do you believe should be prioritized to ensure that we fix the retention problem?
So the statistics clearly tell you there's a leaky pipeline in that age group of 20 to 30, which, by the way, also exists for men. So women leave for reasons we expect, childbearing and marriage less so. Men leave because they aren't particularly stable in the ages of 20 to 30 in terms of where they want to stick. So the statistics may not be too different, but the reasons are different. You heard a couple of suggestions about elder care and child care being two ways to support women coming back in the workplace. I think the whole area of outreach, when they leave for maternity leave, to bring them back in, and the way you board them back in becomes important, because if you come back to a cohort which you belonged in, but you're junior to that cohort, and then you're being treated like the stepchild because, oh my God, she's got a kid at home, and oh my God, I don't want her on my team, then there's no reason why you would come back to that organization. So the way organizations engage with all that training and cost that went into creating that talent in the first place, and then onboarding them back is quite important. And I would lastly just say, you'll see that in the statistics, companies are beginning to tick the boxes in terms of hygiene, doing the right thing, sexual harassment policies. But are companies culturally true to what is required to create an ecosystem which makes it worthwhile for women to say, hey, I do want to come back to the job I left because I loved it enough, and the organization loved me enough to help me along the way?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's exactly what we're trying to do as well, culturally, to ensure that a woman wants to come back to the work that she left before making a life choice. Uday, I want to understand from you as well, you know, talking about the cultural shift, the mindset shift, the behavioral shift that organizations need to focus on to ensure that we do move towards gender parity, that we do fix the attrition problem. Take me through some of the examples of the organizations that you worked with, and as you look back today and reflect on what worked and what didn't. Sometimes policies that are put in place to actually help hurt much more than they help, you know, and they have the counter impact. So what's been the big lesson and the learning for you in all of these years?
So, you know, as Naina said, that it's the critical importance is of the enabling environment that you create. And when we think of creating the enabling environment, we think of really often very big things, and those are all important. But it's the small things that matter equally strongly. So I'll just give you an example. Almost 24, 23 years ago, when I set up a news channel here in Delhi and we were running it, this was the first time a 24/7 live news channel came into existence. Yeah. It was a beast that the country hadn't experienced, and even in terms of managing it, it was something that we were not prepared for. And Delhi being Delhi, one of the big problems was we had a huge workforce of women in the team even then. There were anchors, reporters, sub-editors, video editors, all kinds of people. And the one big problem was that how do you make sure that they get home safely? And this was, you know, I mean, unlike a newspaper where people started at a fixed time and the edition went to bed and they went home, here this was going on and on. And in months of winter or in summer, just getting them home was a huge problem. Even the administration team was not prepared for it. So one of my big struggles was to fight with the people in the administration to make sure that there were cars available for women to be taken home. And then we realized that it wasn't safe to just let one girl or one woman go in a car because there were some incidents. So we had to just then make sure that how do you handle the logistics of all of this? And this was you know, it was a non-trivial, it should have been a trivial problem, but it turned out to be a non-trivial solution. And we were able to do that, and I think today there are a large number of women who are able to work comfortably in news because we were able to solve that. When I moved to Mumbai to run another news channel, women going back home was just not an issue, and I was pleasantly surprised when I went there. There was no dropping home policy because women came out, they happily took a cab and went home. But rains were a huge issue. So in the month of monsoon, you had to solve for a very different kind of problem. So I think the problems are different, and when we talk about enabling environment, you have to work towards participation. We all, you know, I think a great point was made by your colleague that we look at heroes and victims, but there's this huge mass of people in between. How do you make sure they come in and they stay engaged, as you said, that they don't drop off? That's important.
No, and I think, you know, you need to arrive at solutions that are contextual and relevant, because as you said, Bombay's problems are very different from Delhi's problems, and you need to design your policies to cater to that. But Subhrakant, you know, let's talk about the survey. And public transportation, or the lack of, is one of the aspects that, that often force women to move out, and even some men, I have to say, to consider different options. And this is one thing that the survey also highlights, where more needs to be done. Care, creches on premises, again, something that the survey highlights, not enough has been done on that, and perhaps that's an area where intervention could make a difference. On the back of the response that's come in on this first FICCI CNBC-TV18 survey, what would you prioritize as urgent action?
Well, Shireen, first of all, I'd like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to be part of this exercise. I think it's you know, something that we are very proud to be part of and look to take it forward. Your specific question about what can be done, you know, I think there are many things that can be done, and I think first and foremost is to create that cohort to begin with, because when you look at getting women into the workforce, right? If there are, I mean, there will always be pioneers, and we see some of them right here, but I think it's important to then take that journey forward and create that cohort so that it's, you know, there are people around them who understand and who create a support system. And then, of course, there are, I think, other things to be done in terms of sensitization of the workforce and sensitization of colleagues as to what is acceptable, what is not, because even if something is said harmlessly, it can create a lot of damage and create chaos, right? And the second thing, and the other thing, I think, is infrastructure. In terms of the simple aspects, like you know, like Uday just said, that I mean, we can have a big vision, but it's often the little minor details, like not having you know, toilets or toilets which are you know, for women which are not on the same floor, for example. These are the little things which you know, like they say, which come in the way of making women feel safe, accepted, and welcome in the workforce. So I think it's a little bit of all of these things that one needs to target, while keeping an eye open on the big vision. What is it that we're trying to achieve? And that's where I think what the Admiral said, that you know, the longer term vision is important, but the nitty-gritties, the nuts and bolts of making that work to make women feel safe, secure, and welcome in the workforce is, I think, what is important.
No, absolutely. You know, Naina, speaking about the journey that we need to cover, and one of the other aspects the survey shows up, the board of directors, women in leadership positions is what we're speaking of. 22% 22%, board of directors, and C-suite executives 21%. Now, you know, everyone's been talking about whether we need legislation to make change happen, we need, you know, mandatory quotas, etc. And a lot of the needle has turned as far as the listed entities are concerned after the SEBI mandate came in that you need to have women directors on board, you need to have independent women directors on board. I mean, the cohort that we've surveyed are not just representative of the larger companies, many of the smaller universe has also been surveyed here. In your assessment, do you believe that it is imperative for legislation, for mandatory quotas to bring about change?
Yeah. And Shireen, you and I have talked about this before, and I think we were both on the same page on ideally we didn't want quotas. We wanted women to make it through on merit. And I was of that school, you know, because I think quotas then make it difficult for women who've made it there, because everyone sort of points a finger and says, well, you got there because there was a quota, not because you're capable. So that's the sort of negative of it. But I'm a firm believer in quotas after seeing what happened on the women in boards situation. Because we worked very hard for it, and we were at sort of 5%. And with the most ridiculous excuses being made by my male colleagues, oh, she hasn't been on a board before, but you know, every guy has never been on a board before. So what's different here? So she's not been a CEO. Well, not every board member has been a CEO. So different lens being applied to women coming on board, it was frustrating. And then the dictate, when it happened, again, there was resistance, there were excuses, but they had to get there. And one is not good enough. I mean, heck, the guideline for two, the guideline that they even for family-owned companies, it should be an independent director, are yet to be achieved. But the companies that have actually made it, I was just hearing from my old friend at Nestle that their board is at 50%. Some of the best boards I've served on are at a minimum of 33%. So we have a ways to go, but the regulation was really very critical there, and I saw that you did push the minister on that as well. Well done.
And she didn't take the bait. She didn't take the bait at all.
She's very smart.
She is. But Uday, you know, a lot of this also has to do with constant communication. And as I said, you cannot deal with this as an issue on Women's Day. Everybody wants to talk about women on Women's Day and forget about it for the rest of the year. This has to be something that you reinforce the messaging throughout the year. I also, you know, and since you're now involved with the cricket world, a big move, gender parity as far as salaries are concerned, at least, you know, for some part of the cricketing world when we talk about women. And now with the women's IPL coming in, the messaging, the communication, how important is that in changing the narrative and making this a movement that is acceptable and accepted?
I think you know, we should not underestimate the significance of Women's Premier League getting launched. It's taken a decade and a half of Men's Premier League for Women's Premier League to start, but it's the first women's professional league at this scale, you know, for which, you know, the enterprise that I'm involved with paid almost 1,000 crores, and the women are, you know, getting paid seriously.
That deserves a round of applause.
And it's an investment in faith. It's an investment in the belief that women will deliver much greater, I mean, as good cricket and as good entertainment for the fans and viewers of cricket as anybody else. And if you've seen the matches, the quality of the matches are exceptionally good. If you were to just see the match and not look at the faces, if the faces were blurred, there's just no way you'd be able to tell the difference between a men's team playing and a women's team playing. And this has broken the mindset, that because a lot of people said, would it really be as good? But if men are hitting sixes which are going beyond 65 meters, women are hitting sixes that are going beyond 65 meters and even up to 80 meters plus. So that's the difference. And you know, there is ultimately no better test than demonstrating it for everybody.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the big message that's coming out of it.
So what is the message, and I'm going to end with asking each one of you that, Uday, I'll start with you. What is the message that you want to send out to policymakers, to your peers in the corporate world, and to women and men who are watching?
So I think, you know, what the initiatives like putting women on the board and having one woman at least on every board and stuff like that, having CEOs, women CEOs, these are all great, these are all great brand communications for women, and these are enablers. People look at role models. But I think we have to start opening it up at all levels. If you're not creating an opportunity for women to play at club cricket and then women to play at state club cricket and women to go and do other things. Because not everybody can play women's Premier League. Cricket is so big in this, men's cricket is so big in this country that it is being played in every gully, every lane. If you cannot ensure that everybody who's doing something, corporate cricket, if there is no women's corporate cricket, then we are leaving an opportunity untapped.
Yeah. Okay, well, here's to tapping more untapped opportunities, cricket and beyond. Naina Lal Kidwai, the one thing that you would like to send out as a message to those watching?
Equal opportunity, to recognize that women can do as well as any, and if you give that equal opportunity and provide the environment which enables women to rise to their full potential, we would have a workforce that we would be proud of.
Subhrakant?
Equal opportunity, of course, but I think to raise the awareness levels of what women bring to the workforce, it is that well-rounded perspective, it is a different way of looking at things, and diversity in thought process, diversity in how you approach problems at work do give better solutions. So I think it is important for owners, for promoters, for CEOs to have that understanding and appreciation. Many do, many others need to get that appreciation that you're not doing women a favor by getting them to the table. They're actually adding value and adding more, punching above their weight.
Absolutely. Start to look at this as an investment and not as a benefit, and I think that is the mindset change, the mindset shift that we are hoping for. Uday Shankar, Naina Lal Kidwai, Subhrakant Panda, many, many thanks for joining hands with us here to put forward the first CNBC-TV18 FICCI Gender Parity Survey. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause. There's plenty of fun coming up. It's not just going to be conversation. We've got music and we've got slam poetry and plenty of fun coming up. But thank you once again for joining us here this evening. Appreciate your time.